afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Deal Center's virtual series with experts in language and literacy. We have again Dr. Tim Rosinski joining us today. I'm the Executive Director, Teresa Magpuri-Lavelle, and I'm just so thrilled that you are able to join us for yet another wonderful session. There are things that I do want to share with you technology-wise before we go ahead and get started, just so you can maximize viewing here. If you would like to be able to see the PowerPoint, which I'm sure you all do, there are tabs at the left-hand part of your screen under the normal menu options of Follow, Edit, and Share and View. Down right below that row, you'll see other tabs listed as Quick Start, Session Info, the Deal Center PowerPoint. To view Dr. Tim Rosinski's PowerPoint, please click on the tab to the far right, and you'll be able to view his PowerPoint. Also, if you would like to view it in full screen, if you look to the bottom of your screen, the bottom left-hand corner, you will see the words full screen. If you click there, you will be able to enlarge the PowerPoint. So I turn this over to Dr. Tim Rosinski. Enjoy time with him, and thank you for joining us.
And hello, everyone. Glad with you again. I hear a little bit of echo. If you will mute, everybody mute their speech. We should get rid of that. Many of you were with me last week, we talked about word study, foundational skills. And today we're going to go to the next level and focus on reading fluency. So that's the topic for today. Actually, fluency has been one of my big areas for my career. You notice there at the on either side of my name, there are a couple books that I've written over the past few years that focus on reading fluency. So if you're interested in following up on today's lecture, that would be one way to go. Also for you, if you have to have a piece of paper around, you might want to jot down my email address. If you have any questions or thoughts or insights, I already heard from several of you from last week. I do respond to my email, trosinski@kent.edu. And then my Twitter feed is @TimRosinski1. We talked a little bit more about that a little bit because every day I've been putting up a word study lesson. And then find my website, it's timrosinski.com. So please, I'm going to have homework for you to go back and out my website. And again, I'll share some of that with you. But I do mention my book there, the Book of Fluency. It has they're not muted. If you can check and mute that, so that there's a little bit of an echo going on here. It's direct to the right of your name under the attendees. The microphone should look red. But really nice response to this mega book. We try to make it a very oriented book, something with ideas that you can employ in your own classroom. I love one of the first reviews that came out just last year. Amazing resource, fresh ideas. Any teacher I know, I'll be coming back to this book of resources again and again. So easy to use. I can't imagine a better review than that. And I can be honest with you, I did not write that review. Did I pay anybody to write that review here? I'd love to tell you that it did win a big award last year, the Teacher's Choice Award, which is probably one of the top awards you can get for an education, especially reading education book. So, and something that really makes us know that we're onto something. If you're helping kids become more fluent readers, and I know you are, this might be something to take a look at here. Reading fluency, both aspects of it, automaticity and prosody. We'll talk more about that in a minute here. I want to mention my website, timrosinski.com. This is your homework for tonight. If you look under where it says blog, you'll see a collection of blog I do about once a month. I think I shared this with you last week. Like this nice one example of they're just ideas that you can bring into your classroom. And this one was inspired by going to the National Art Gallery in Washington, D.C., and finding this piece of art, which is more than a collection of words that are the same meaning for money. I thought that's a pretty good idea of expanding kids' vocabulary there, letting them do the same thing. And then in resources, I have research articles, useful materials, things that, again, you can download. I kind of focused on where it says useful materials. And you can see I think I have things like concept maps, song books, readers theater scripts, Edward Fry's instant word list, and other things that you can just download and your own computer, share with your colleagues if you like. So that's part of homework for tonight. But since I thought, how about if we start with a fluency exercise? Now, that I'm a reading clinic here at Kent State, where I've been teaching for 30 years, we work with kids who struggle in reading. And what we find is most of those kids struggle in these foundational areas. They have with word recognition, vocabulary, what we talked about last week, and they also have problems in the area of reading fluency. So we work on fluency. And so we start every day with this fluency exercise like this. Now, I call it a fluency exercise, but it's really song. And I hope any teacher worth his or salt likes to sing as well, whether or not you think you're a good singer. So I thought we could start with this one. I just won a couple weeks ago around birthday. It's called the Garden Song. Now you are probably getting your gardens in already or thinking of it. And what a lovely song. It was written by a teacher, I think, who became a folk singer. His name is David Mallet. So you probably know this song. If you don't, feel free to sing along with me. Here's how. Inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. Gulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, bless these seeds I sow. Please them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. That's the chorus. Then, of course, we have to go through the various lyrics. Plant your straight and long, sing with a prayer and song. Mother will make you strong if you give her loving care. Oh, crushing from a tree, he's got hungry eyes on me. In burden I'm as free as that feathered thief up there. Then back to the verse. Inch by inch, row, gonna make this garden grow. Gulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. And another great song. And it's on for several other you find it quite easily by searching Google. Go to Google Garden Song, it'll pop right up. Familiar with the melody, you can find the melody also on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search song. You'll find various performers. My favorite is John Denver. Performed this song on the Muppet Show many years ago. Well, one of the nice things about it is that some of these, they actually give you the captions so that the kids could sing along and actually see the words if you were to play it on your YouTube video here. You must say, I say that this is also a metaphor. Because, you know, what we're doing is we're teachers. And to me, this is a great metaphor for teaching. You know, we're factory workers. We're gardeners. We plant seed, you know, that child, and then nurture it. We water it. We feed it. We pull up the weeds around it. And, of course, that child grows up on his or her own. That's what we do as teachers. So I think this song is a great metaphor for what we all do, and how appropriate this being Teacher Appreciation Week here. Now, he likes gardening. I understand that. Neither did Arlo Guthrie. So he decided to write his own version of this song. It's called the Anti-Garden Song. So I just wanted to be, to those of you who don't like to garden, this one is for you. Slugging weed by weed, boy, this garden's got me cheat. All the insects come to feed on my tomato plants. Sunbraced and skinned up knees, the kitchen's choked with zucchinis. I'm shopping at the A&Ps next time I get a chance. So for those of you who are not really into gardening, that I just wanted to be fair. That one's for you as well. With our kids every day, and write poetry. And I'd like to know why. There's several reasons. And I forgot to delete this one, but here's another song. We won't do another one very appropriate for today. When April showers may come your way, bring the flowers that bloom in May. I posted that one on my Twitter feed just last week on May 1st when we were moving from April to May here. But the reason is multiple. The first is it's fun. When you and I sing, our brains release more of those endorphins, that serotonin, whatever, those that make you feel good. That's why, you might shower every morning to get the day off to a great start. It's fun. It is fun. And, school should be fun. I'm not sure the school is as much fun as it used to be. For testing and the accountability, and now we got this pandemic going on. But I would like to suggest that there's a way of bringing a little bit more fun into our classrooms. Even those of you who still might be teaching remotely, find ways of bringing song into our students' lives, even if you might share with them thing on YouTube. There's a great Lucy scholar by the name of Louise Rosenblatt who talked about two kinds of reading people do: aesthetic reading and efferent reading. Now, as a kind of reading we do a lot of in school, and of course we're going to do even more, it seems like, as time goes on. It's reading to learn. When I read social studies, science, mathematics, they're doing efferent reading. But there's this other kind of reading, aesthetic reading. It's not much to educate the head, it's to touch the heart. We're inspired. We read to have our breath taken away. The aesthetic is actually a Greek word, and it means, when you go to a dentist and you get an anesthetic, what happens? You lose feelings in your jaw. It's kind of reading that touches our hearts, that makes us feel human beings. And think about all the kinds of reading we do that aesthetic. Unfortunately, with Mother's Day coming up, maybe some of you might find a way to read "Love You Forever," a book by Robert Much, to your students. The mom who follows her son around, even though he's in his mid-40s, and every night she sings him to sleep with a little lullaby. Well, that lullaby, it should be sung. Love you forever, I like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby, you'll be. Some tears going. In fact, you might want to share that with your kids, or those of you who have a mom around might want to even share that book. Or how about Fern Grows? Those of you who work with upper elementary grade kids. A wonderful, wonderful book. But I like that, including him, is Sandy. I won't give her last name, but she told me a few years ago, Tim, I'm not reading Where the Red Fern Grows to my kids anymore. And I said, why? And she says, it's a great book, but you know what? I make kids to see me cry at the end when those two dogs die. I think kids need to see their teachers cry. That's not exactly the way I meant to say that, but you know what I mean. They see us having those aesthetic experiences, right? And what better way of having that aesthetic experience than through a song or a poem, for that matter. Every one of us probably has a song or a poem that would bring us to tears in a matter of minutes. That's what song does. It's aesthetic. It's cultural. There's a professor at the University of Virginia by the name of Dr. E.D. Hirsch, and he talks about cultural literacy. And the literacy we're talking about today, it's the literacy that he wants all students to know. He calls it core knowledge, perhaps. And he says is that students today don't have a good sense of, say, what it means to be an American. He gives evidence such as every year they do a survey of students around the country. And a couple of years ago, they did a survey of school kids. It was around President's Day. One of the asked was, who was the president of the United States during the American Civil War? If the students could answer that question correctly, Abraham Lincoln, right around Lincoln's birthday, President's Day. Now, I was stunned. It's that kind of thing. We're of this cultural education, this civics education, if you will. And song and poetry can do that. Look at some of these songs here. Are just, we probably all know because we're adults. God Bless America. The Battle of Freedom from the Civil War. Oh, Captain, my Captain, that great poem by Walt Whitman. Over from the First World War, over there, send the word over there. We shall him from the right, sir. the grand old flag, and you spare a dime for the Great Depression. And of course, remember, you have to be my age to remember that last one, 4 Dead in Ohio. That picture there you see to the right of that is that famous picture that won the Pulitzer Prize back in 1970. We just had our commemoration, our 50th commemoration of the shootings at Kent State. But as a result of that, Neil Young wrote that famous song, 4 Dead in Ohio, back in 1970. We carry our culture on the backs of rhythmical words, as Robert Pinsky would say, and poetry as well. And song does that, all those sorts of things. So singing, it's fun, it's aesthetic, it's cultural, but there's one more big one, and of course we all know what that one is. It's reading. What do you do when you sing a song? You have the words in front of you. You're on the very best material for developing full fluency, word recognition, even comprehension in our students. It's nothing more than a short, highly predictable, easy to learn text that needs to be read out loud with expression and with enthusiasm and joy. I'll give you a letter, an email that I received about 10 years ago. I was giving a presentation in New York City at Lewis Teachers College there in New York, Institute, and we started with some songs of New York City. I'll take Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island too. And then I went on with my lecture. So I often start my lectures with a song or two. Anyways, this was in August of 2010, I believe it was, 10 years ago. In April, I received an email, and it was from Becky Saki. You can see her name there at the bottom right-hand corner. The teacher, first teacher from Danbury, Connecticut, and this is what she wrote to me. She says, I chose myself in October to begin singing with my first graders, and we've been singing ever since. I've never seen so much progress in reading. Oh, every one of my first graders are reading on grade level or higher, and they love to sing. She told me when I called her up after getting this email, I said, Becky, she said that she's been her first grade teacher for a long time, over 20 years. This was the first time ever where it was at grade level. There. Well, I didn't really have to convince her because she was already pretty convinced that the following year to continue to do this. What she does is she teaches her kids 1 or 2 songs over the course of a week. They rehearse it, and then on Friday they'll have a sing-along or a hootenanny or some sort of performance the songs they had been practicing, because now they can sing and read them very well. Here she did this. Same thing happened. Every one of her students was reading at grade level. So I mentioned that was because Becky and I turned this experience that she had with singing into an article. Bring back the magic of song for the teaching of reading on my website. So timrosinski.com. If you want to follow, read Becky's story, you can find it there. But if you think about it, that's all it is. It's reading. But I think the reading that even your struggling readers can be successful at. The brevity, the rhythm, the rhyme, all these make them so accessible even for our younger kids there. But it's not younger kids. Here's a study that appeared in Reading Psychology. There, but the key word there is middle school readers. This was a study I was actually called down to Florida on by some colleagues. This is January of several years ago. Asked me to come work with some colleagues in Hillsborough County, I believe it was, near Tampa, and middle schoolers who had on the verge of being retained because they weren't able to pass. It was CAT or whatever that standardized test the kids take, which is a comprehension test. I was looking at these kids, and we found out that their problem was fluency. They're really slow with no enthusiasm, no expression. So in intervention form, this was put on a computer. The children, these students were singing. They were on the computer screen, and they put the headphones and into the songs with them, and their job was to sing along, and the point where they could sing on their own. To make the story short, after a 12-week intervention, we took another look at these students, and they made over years progress in 2 weeks' time. In fact, it wasn't just a matter of them reading fast. It was reading with better comprehension. Fluency opens the door for comprehension. When this took that silent comprehension test, all but one of them passed. They didn't have to be retained. And here was the best part. When these students, many of them said, how come we don't sing in school anymore? You know, what's the thing that goes when schools have budgetary problems? I wonder when all this pandemic stuff we're having behind us, how many schools are going to be dropping education. And that's that wish, but, you know, it's my, and if it does, that means we have to bring it into our classrooms, song. And not just middle school or elementary, this was high school. What Clearinghouse from the Department of Education. This was a study in Hawaii where, as an intervention, teachers essentially brought in their own karaoke machines. So students looked at, they were singing songs they already knew from listening to them on their iPads and iPhones, but now saw the subtitles. They saw the actual words on the karaoke machine or the computer, whatever they were using. And then what they found was this experience improved fluency. And because fluency is the gateway to comprehension, even comprehension improved as well significantly. So no matter what grade level you're working with, beginners, middle school readers, high schoolers, if they're having trouble and the trouble is fluency, this is something that really can make a difference. And it's not just song poetry. Again, think about all the poems we probably still know by heart as adults that we learned in high school. You know, there's something very memorable about poetry and song. And again, I say it's the perfect text for struggling readers. In our clinic, I'll talk a little more about this a little bit later. One of ours is for students to be able to read something very well at the end of every single day that they can be successful at. You can learn to read well every single day. A poem, you know, a 4 or 12-line poem. You practice it enough times, you know, you almost get it to the point where you can know it by heart, but that practice leads to fluency here. Well, so I already shared with you that. I don't know why these are popping up again here. But what are the features of poems and songs and song lyrics? Well, that make them so accessible for especially our struggling readers. First, so they're not long. You're not asking a student to master, you know, a 30, 60, 128-page report or book. It's, you know, relatively short. And then the rhyme. All these things make them very easy to learn. You know, sometimes you just hear the melody of something, you know the words. Da 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 da. You are my sunshine, my only. So all these things are act as scaffolds, and eventually, you know, they're all easy to memorize. And you might say, well, I don't want my kids to necessarily memorize words. If you think about it, what is a sight word? A sight word is nothing more than a memorized word. You know, sight and sound. The words we want kids to develop and learn to the point of the sight words, you know, put them to rhythm, to rhyme, to melody. They're going to remember them forever. I've had the experience of even working with people with problems, adults with Alzheimer's, and it's interesting, many of these folks would not remember me from one week to the next, but in a song, and they'll remember that one if they heard it just yesterday. And in many cases, it's been years since they would hear old-fashioned songs like "Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree with Anyone Else But Me," on and on and on. There's so go back to my website that I mentioned. I won't belabor the point, but I have songbooks up there. I have patriotic songbooks, songbooks about the holidays, songbooks about springtime, September, the beginning of school, and so on. So you can at least get started there with your students. Does this have the potential for improving reading? So writing. This is another friend of mine, another first grade teacher in New York State, I believe. She has write letters to their moms and dads on Mother's Day and Father's Day. And she also does a lot of singing with her students, and many of the songs that the kids were singing ended up being on the letters that the kids were writing. This is one by a little boy by the name of Ricardo, and he wrote to his father. He said, "Dear Daddy, I love you so much, Daddy, because you play ball with me and you come to the park with me. You sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." And then he line, "Please don't ever go away." And then it was in some Billy Joel, "I love you just the way you are." Doesn't that just touch your heart? Talk about an aesthetic experience. That's it right there. You come to the house, look on the walls of our family room, you this kind of stuff from my 4 adult children back when they were kids. It's not tests, it's not the report cards, it's this kind of stuff. And the things that memories are built on, good memories, and we want to have our children to have these kind of, well, isn't that interesting? By the way, I asked this teacher, were you Billy Joel songs? And she said, no, but his music. And I would put it on in the morning. I was, before the kids came in, as they were coming in, he'd be playing his music, and I guess some of the kids just began to absorb it. They're like all absorb music with our kids. So anyways, bring back song, but poetry too. And we'll get back to that a little bit more. Here's the thing I shared with you last week. 3 related to teaching reading words, which we talked about last week: fluency, instruction, and comprehension. Goal, but together we have to master those top 2: word study and fluency. And for many kids, you see that line there at the truth between fluency and comprehension? For some, it's not a line. It's a barrier from comprehension. These are them who, when they read, they have trouble understanding the words, reading the words correctly, reading their words fluently. And as a result, comprehension, they don't get to full comprehension here. Last week, we again a little bit of background here. We need to go back to these foundational skills. Why? Because we haven't seen much progress in reading instruction over the last 25 or so years here. This is National Assessment of Educational Progress, grade 4, from 1992 to 2017. And I know it's a little small scale of the chart here, but it's pretty flat, isn't it? Despite, reading first, despite core, despite all these interventions, we haven't much progress. Much the same. Hardly any progress at all there. When we were kids to other countries, we're not doing so well there either. They're kind of middle of the bunch. Number 15 when compared with the rest of the world. Look what's number 1, Russia. Of all there. We have our work cut out for us, don't we? And so word study, which is what we did last week. And I give you a little bit of a reminder. One of the things I talked about was doing word ladders. This is the one, I think we did this one last week. We went from planet to earth, one word after another, and a good body of research that supports this there. And of course, several of these word ladder books out there. So if you want to do something and share with parents things to do at home for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, build word recognition, spelling, vocabulary, this might be something to do. But I mentioned that ever since we've started this nation lockdown, I've been doing a daily letter, and I post it on my Twitter feed. So there's a reason why I hope you're following me on Twitter at Tim Rosinski1. This every day I will post both a sheet like this. This was from yesterday, 2 days ago, National Star Wars Day. Force be with you, and that's the answer sheet. So if you were to do this with your students, the answers, and the kids would do this one. So it gives you the sheet, and the kids can print this out at home, and they would follow along. The clues are there as well. So that's every single day. I've now for I think probably close to 60 days now. Every day a new one here. This is the one for today, National Nurse Day. So if you go to my Twitter feed right now, you would find one posted. It starts with the word nurse and it ends with the word star, because our stars today are nurses. And it's a good way to celebrate National Nurses Day. They're rock stars. Teachers are too, by the way. And I'm be posting a word ladder for teachers later this week. So you might want to keep your eyes out for that one. Teachers rock. Just gave it away. So better be quiet there. One more thing here. I'm doing a giveaway. So follow me on Twitter. The very first thing at the top of my Twitter page is this one here. What I ask you to do is to follow me, which hopefully you're already doing, but it answer a question. Why do you think teachers rock? And if you just write in, why do teachers rock? you entered in this giveaway. And prize, the winner will be selected on Friday. Is you get a free one of these books there, one of the word ladder books. We'll send it to you, which one you'll want. So, incentive there to go. One that you might want to try on Twitter too. So it's a nice way of getting some free stuff. Is Monday I do what I call Morphology Monday. And 2 days ago, last Monday, at Tim Rosinski 1, you'll find my Twitter feed. A morpheme is more of vocabulary. It's a word pattern that has meaning. And we worked on this past Monday was mater, M-A-T-E-R, mater. It's a Latin word, mother. Of course, with the day showing up here next week, or this Sunday, that's very appropriate. And it's a little lesson. You can print this out, and parents or teachers can, a little 10-minute activity with their kids. But the idea is that if you know mater, you can figure out words like maternal, matriarch, matron, matrimony, and many other words as well, all having something to do with mothers there. Word study is important, but we alone doesn't get us down to comprehension. So have this other thing to work on, and that's fluency. Now, fluency is it's multidimensional. There's two parts to it. One is this thing called automaticity in word recognition, the ability to recognize words automatically or effortlessly. And this, but only gets you halfway. If he is a bridge between word study and comprehension, that only gets us halfway across that bridge. Half is prosody or expression, comprehension. If I think about somebody who's a fluent reader or speaker, it's not somebody who reads fast. So this is their voice to make meaning. They get loud, they get soft, they get fast, they get slow, they have pauses, and all things, improve the understanding of the text that you might be reading. Well, we know kids who, when they read orally, we read with good expression. When they read silently, they tend to be our best comprehenders there. So we want to complete this fluency bridge. And I will be honest with you, most kids who are average to above average readers, they use this bridge on their own. They just read a lot, and they automatically get to comprehension. Kids who struggle, though, they don't cross that bridge. Maybe they can sound out the words. Maybe they know what the words mean, but they do it so they have much effort into it. They're full of effort, letter by letter and sound by sound. And, of course, they're up there at the top, and they don't cross that bridge there. I know quite a bit about reading. I'm going to brag a little bit. I know a little bit about reading fluency. I wrote the fluency chapter for the Handbook of Reading Research a few years ago, titled Reading Fluency, along with some colleagues there. So I consider myself very knowledgeable about reading fluency. But really what got me into fluency was not innocent. It actually began when I was a teacher. Back in the early to mid-1970s, I was in the service, and when I got out, I used the GI Bill to become a teacher. And off as a classroom teacher, and eventually became an interventionist or a Title I teacher. I knew something. I had these kids, my master's degree in reading, and to help these children who are struggling, as a Title I interventionist. But when I found I didn't know so much, these kids were not moving the way they were supposed to be. And I was teaching them phonics and vocabulary and spelling and attention, but bouncing along the bottom. Well, for me, I was working on my master's, as I said, and reading some of these articles that were just beginning to appear in reading research. One was called The Bit of Repeated Readings by Dr. J. Samuels. He talked about the idea of having kids practice read, but not one thing after another. Practice one thing until you can read it well, and then move on to something else. And it's considered a classic article nowadays. It was in 1979. Another one was called After Decoding, Then What? By Carol Chomsky. Kids phonics, and they're really good at it, but they still aren't making any progress. Then what do they do? And I have more to say about this one in a minute or so. But this one here by Richard Ellington, Fluency, the Neglected Reading Goal. What Ellington argued was that fluency is important, but we kind of neglected it. This is in 1983, I believe he wrote this. 83. And this is actually what he wrote in in the article. He said, a lack of fluency in oral reading is often as a characteristic of poor readers, but it is seldom treated. And many of us who were with kids, we know kids who struggle with fluency by listening to read for 30 seconds. You can tell. But what do we do? Now, this is E3, and I would like to argue that perhaps we're not doing enough there, and we need to, because it is so important. So that was eye opener, and I actually started to employ some of these methods they were talking about as an intervention. Some of these kids began to take off and stop taking. Some of the things I'll be sharing with you in just a minute or so here. So fluency, that was back in the 80s and 70s or so. Have we learned more? Well, I don't look here. That all came up. It was one of those 5 years. You guys remember what they were: vocabulary, phonics, phoneme awareness, comprehension, and fluency. So you go. Common Core. Now, Georgia has their own standards, but they're very similar to the Common Core. Fluency is there. 1 through 5, reading with accuracy and fluency, expression. It's finding its way into various documents that are coming up. But some of you remember reading first. This is the second George Bush, was his initiative. To solve the literacy problems. Every third grader was going to be reading at grade level by the end of third grade. How would I do that? Well, if you were reading first school, you would implement those big 5 things each and every day of the year in your school. Grades K through 3. When you mix phonics, vocabulary, fluent comprehension. Well, when this at the end, 8 years later, and find out, okay, do you see any progress? The answer was essentially no. Why didn't it work out? Why didn't this reading first work out? Well, because when they looked at actual lessons that were happening in these schools, less than 5 minutes per day was devoted to fluency. Less than minutes, both in first schools and non-reading first schools. Right? Maybe that was part of the reason. It's maybe better than 2 minutes, but it's a lot. You can't get a whole lot done in 5 minutes. I would like to suggest maybe 50 minutes or 20 minutes per day, maybe even longer, for those of our kids who struggle here. This What's Hot in Reading today. The Literacy Association every year has done this thing where they ask experts, what are the hot topics in reading? And 2009 through 2015, so about a 6-7 year span there, when they asked about reading fluency, these experts are saying, not hot, not hot. Not only was it not hot, they were arguing that it shouldn't be hot here. And I think part of the reason was because of this idea that because of some of the ways we assess fluency, it was basically making kids read fast. You'll notice that after 2015, I don't have anything there. And the reason is because from 2016 on, they just quit asking. Why ask if you're going to get the same answer here? Well, that kind of ticked me off. And fluency is hot. So I actually wrote an article that appeared in Teacher years ago, and it's very appropriately named Why Reading Fluency Should Be Hot. Follow-up today is to go to my website, timrosinski.com, click under resources, and you'll find this article. You can print it out. It'd be a good way of following up on today's lecture here, but I think it should be hot. And many of you, maybe just your presence here, that you feel it is as well. But the Common Core identify this as something that is developed in the primary grade, or in the elementary grades. But about that, if you're by the end of 5th grade, does that go away then? It's no longer a problem in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? And of course, the answer is not that at all. Through high school, even as adults, if you're not a fluent reader early on, there's a good chance you're going to be struggling later on. So we did with high school kids, and we found it was a huge problem, especially students who struggle in high school. Is reading fluency a key for successful high school reading? The answer was yes. We actually found it to be even with college students as well. So those who may be beyond grades 5 teaching something, we can just observe ourselves of Something is an issue even for kids beyond that. If they did, in elementary grades, we have to help them beyond that. Let's take a look at reading fluency. Crossing that bridge here, automaticity. I'm going to ask you to do a little test with me. We're going to do a word recognition test. What I'm going to do, I'll do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to flash some words in front of you, and your job is simply to read the words, okay? So here we won't be able to tell if you get them right or not, but you can grade yourself, okay? So here's the first one, 3, 2, 1. You get it? Dog? Very good. Word. 3, 2, 1. Here's the next one. 3, 2, 1. A little better. It has 2 words. Macon, Georgia. All right. And let's see. Here's another one. A little bit even longer than that. I think this one is 4 words. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Did you get the States of America? Now, these flashes are less than a second. I think they're about 4/10 of a second, and yet you're able to read this. Here's one for you. You guys ready? 3, 2, 1. Did you get that one? I had some trouble with that. I'm going to go back to it. It's Nomen. Krieger Nomen. It's not really up. But you had to. And why? We'll see if we can explain it in terms of our model here, automaticity here. With making Georgia president of the United States, those words are recognized automatically. You have to have them, little of those words in your head. And all you were doing when you saw the flash was you were matching it up to your template, and of course, with hardly any effort at all, you were able to recognize the word. And what that means then is that your energy can be devoted to comprehension, where it's to be going. However, with Krieger and Nomen, you could figure it out. You had to sound it out. You'd have to use your phonics skills, your word recognition skills, and you could sound it out. But it took up energy, took up mental energy that no longer can be devoted to comprehension. And as a result, if that were a passage, your comprehension would be compromised a bit. Your comprehension would not be as good as it would have been with those other words there. That's what's saying. See, fluency, what this automaticity thing says that we only have a limited amount of mental energy here. And if we use too much of that energy to figure out the words, we don't have that energy left over for comprehension. It's not enough just to teach kids to be accurate in word recognition. They have to be automatic. When you're doing something, recognizing words and phrases, you put minimal effort into it, and that reserves most of this this energy that can be applied to comprehension. Now, I often use is learning to drive a car. You've probably seen or so sitting behind the car for the first time, and all your mental energy had to be devoted to the steering wheel, the brake pedal, the accelerator, the gear shift, and all that. If mom or dad were sitting next to you and they tried to start a conversation, you might have to hush them because you had to focus. But what's not only accurate in your driving, you quit running over the curb, it also became automatic in your driving. Have you ever driven someplace and you don't know how you got there? It's an automatic task. You weren't even paying attention. But now we are automatic at our driving. We could safely and listen to the radio, talk on the phone, converse with the passenger, and still drive accurately and safely. We can multitask. Same thing with reading, except what we want to do is multitask so that they can pay attention and comprehension of what that is they're reading. Another example I'd like for you to take a look at that kind of shares this whole notion. Running Babbitt, The Adventures of Running Babbitt, by Shel Silverstein. Poetry. I think it's the last book he wrote before he passed away. I'd like you to read one short poem by Shel. And go ahead and read it to yourself silently or orally if you like, since we're sound here. And we're done, we'll have a little comprehension test. Okay, so go ahead and read Running Het Scansum, and then we'll have a test when you're done. Okay. Did you get myself, but I've read it several times, so I can got through it pretty fast. I suspect some of you may not have here. But anyways, here's the question. Where did Ronnie's tear get tangled? Where did tear get tangled? It's a literal question. Go ahead and answer the question. Are you but what is it? Well, the answer is in the twicket and the thigs. It's a very literal question. Ronnie's tear got tangled in the twicket and the. Well, what here again? Well, these are what some people call spoonerism. What was he took in every line and flipped them. So work kig, curly wig, and tuck it on with star, stuck it on with tar. Ronnie thought, now I look like a handsome Stu V. Mart, movie star. So two letters in each line took away your automaticity. You could read them accurately. You could figure out what the words actually meant. But they took a bit more energy. And two things happened. Number one, you read it more slowly than normal. And number two, your comprehension probably was not as good as if it were written in a conventional way. I don't know if this is a good example of what happens to kids, but how would you like to be the kid who everything you read is like this every day? You're a non-fluent reader. And Ronnie on a whirly gig and talk. Wouldn't you get frustrated? Wouldn't you start to hate reading? Wouldn't you start to avoid reading? And, this is not a reflection of intelligence. Einstein was one of these kids, and Thomas Edison was also. For teachers and parents that help them get over this difficulty, but it is something that many of our kids face here. So what happens then again with Ronnie Babbitt is you are forced to analyze some of these words a little bit more closely than you normally would because they're not automatically recognized. As a result, comprehension and speed is the effect of that here. Now, your automaticity, who's listening to me is probably familiar with this. Whether you use Dimples or Ames Web or some other assessment method, you have kids read a text, grade level text for a minute, and you count words they read correctly in that minute's time, and then you compare it against some norms here. These come from Jan Hasbrook and Jerry Tyndall. They did these norms here. You can find them online. They're pretty easy. Just Hasbrook and Tyndall. Although I will mention also that my PowerPoint slides here will be available to you if you're interested. They're being sent. I sent them to Teresa and the folks at the Deal Center. Well, let's just take a quick look here where the arrow is. It says grade 3. Okay, springtime of grade 3. So if you look at the 50th percentile is the average, the norm. The right in the middle. And percentile at spring is if I'm reading this correctly, is 107. 100 words correct. So what we're saying here then is that if you're a third grader and I gave you a third grade reading text to read, you should be able to read 100 or somewhere around 107 words correct per minute or better. And that indicates you have normal automaticity. How about 7? Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with that. What I'm concerned about is that child who is, say, at the 78, 50, 40 words per minute. You might say, well, they're reading every word correctly. Isn't that good enough? And the answer is no. Why are they reading so slowly? And everything they read is like Ronnie Babbitt. They're stopping and sounding out every word, and yes, slowing them down, but it's also affecting their comprehension because they don't have that mental energy to making sense out of the text there. So something here before we move on about this notion of reading speed. Reading speed is not the same as automaticity and word recognition. It's why we measure it, but it's the same. It's an indicator, automaticity. So you can use it. Actually use it as assessment. Very good. It's not the same. And the reason I mention that is we don't teach automaticity by making kids read fast. And I've been all around the country where well-meaning teachers, well-meaning principals, are trying to do their best to help kids become more fluent readers, and they end up getting out the stopwatch and they ask kids to read faster than the day before. And improve their reading speed. That doesn't make them more automatic readers. It doesn't improve their comprehension. It doesn't improve their overall reading. I become readers the same way you and I became fast readers, was which we read a lot, right? We read a lot and just automatically became faster readers there. We didn't have to go through any stopwatch reading or speed reading or anything at all like that there. So we need to avoid that. Use Ames Web as an indicator, but only as an indicator. I use my dog as an analogy to that. That's Jasinski. She's the one on the bottom. She can read, by the way. I taught her how to read. She's well, we're still working on our controlled vowels with her, but what I'll tell you is that she has an indicator on her also. It's her tail. I think it's an indicator of disposition. When I come home from work, Ginger greets me at the door, her tail's going back and forth, and what does that mean? It's indicating that she's really happy to see me. Sometimes I come home from work and my dog greets me at the door and the tail's not wagging. It's just kind of laying there between her legs. What does that indicate? Well, it's that she had a rough day, or she's not feeling good, or something bad. And so I have to intervene. I give her a biscuit, take her for a walk, pet her, tail wags, we're done. But if I was out of the country and when I came home, and it was gone for about 2-3 weeks, and when I came home, my dog wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, I walked in the door, she's laying on the couch, looking at facing the wall, took a look over at me and went back to looking at the wall. She was kind of off here. And I go over to her and I said, Ginger, why didn't you greet me at the door? It makes you feel bad. And no response from her. So I pet her. Nothing. Yeah, gave her a biscuit. Favorite. Fell on the floor. I think for a walk and she looked up at me. Not with you. Really ticked that I was gone so long. So that was tier 1 intervention. We went to tier 2. But I reached around and I grabbed her by her tail and started to wag it for her. Her response to that was to look up at me, and she went, "Arr, arr." So that didn't work out. So we went to tier 3 intervention, which is, whatever tier 3 is, whatever you do in tier 2, just do more of it. Do that. But what I did was, I started to wag her tail a little bit more vigorously, and her response was to bite me. You're probably wondering, what are you talking about, Rosinski? Well, here's my point. A dog wagging is an indicator of their disposition, right? When the wags are happy. But make dogs happy by wagging their tail for them. And of course, there is no. Similarly, sin reading is an indicator of automaticity, a part of fluency. But to students, good readers, by telling them to read fast or encouraging them to read fast or giving them exercises to read fast. And the answer is no. Barking up the wrong tree, we might say here. A tail for a dog does not make them happy, and teaching kids to read fast does not make them fluent readers there. So we need to really keep that in mind as we move forward here. But that bridge, remember, automaticity, got us halfway. That's our connection to word study. Now we want to come all the way down to comprehension, and this is where prosody kicks in, prosody or expressiveness. Is that if I think about somebody who's a fluent reader, fluent speaker, it's not somebody who reads fast, it's somebody who uses their voice to make meaning. They raise their voice or lower their voice, they emphasize words, they have dramatic pauses, and all things add to the meaning that the person's reading, or maybe somebody's in the audience listening to them. There. So the best example I can think of what I'm talking about, how expression changes meaning. Goes back to an old bureaucrat that was popular several years ago. This young man had these different experiences during this commercial, and he had several words. He used one word in response to each different experience. That word was dude. But every word dude had a different meaning to it because of the way he said it. For example, to say hello to somebody using the dude, what did it sound? Dude, right? Okay. If we're to express consternation and disappointment, how would it sound now? Dude. If you were to ask him, how would you make it sound now? Dude? Powerball lottery. How would it sound? Dude! So, different words that carry the meaning. It's the way you say the words, the way you emphasize the words is the way you can hear. And what we're pointing out, even, by the way, when you read silently, you hear yourself. In fact, I argue there's no such thing as silent reading. Even when we read silently, there's vestiges of movement there in our vocal cords where we're still hearing ourselves. And in fact, I think almost everybody I've ever interviewed, do you hear yourself when you read? Most of them will say yes. So we want to develop, it's not just an oral a reading exercise here. Here's one I'll ask you to read here. It's a 5-word sentence. Go ahead and read it to yourself. And what does it mean? Okay. Okay. What does the sentence mean? I hope if you haven't seen it before, what's the problem? Problem is your natural sense of phrasing. Good part of fluency is reading in chunks, reading phrases. And your sense of phrasing wants you to read it that way. The old man, the book. It's not a sentence. It doesn't make any sense, right? What you have to do is phrase it slightly differently. You put it out of putting that slash mark after man, put it at old. The old man, the RPs have made dinner cruise on Lake Lanier. They're up near Atlanta. All the old people are getting on board. Of course it is, but we have students who read that way. Yeah, anything. They'll read it like this. The old man, the boat. Or now it's go in the boat. We get them to read fast, and of course neither of those help. We want phrasing, meaning phrasing, and that of course again is what property and expression help us with. Now, measure processing is the way you measure automaticity. Automaticity is measured by speed of reading. Is measured by simply listening to kids read. The fluency scale that I developed with my colleague Jerry Zutel, we call it bi-dimensional fluency rubric. It's on my website again. Simply listening to kids read. That 1 minute assessment. Well, same time you might also want to listen carefully or listen to a recording of their reading and then rate them on these 4 dimensions: expression, volume, phrasing, smooth, and pacing. Do they read with expression, volume that is indicative of a good reader? Do they phrase in chunks, or is it more word by word? Is smooth? They constantly stopping and going back, and long exaggerated pauses. Is it pacing more conversational, like I'm speaking right now, or does it tend to be excessively slow or fast? You're on 1 to 4 on each of those dimensions, so the lowest score is 4 and the highest score is 16. And 4 is a score of 10 or more. Easy to do. There's research behind it, and it's a good way of getting kids to understand what we're meaning by prosody. I've actually created kid-friendly versions of this so that you can put on the walls of your classroom so that kids can rate their own personal reading or their classmates when they read in school. Take find it there as well. But it's measuring this prosody. So we measure both of those, automaticity and prosody. We're not one or the other. So automaticity, prosody. Here's the question. This fluency thing connected to comprehension. So there's a connection with good expression, or encourage them to read automatically. Well, here's what it tells us. Look at the bottom. I don't want to be overly statistical with you, but they have done studies where they look at comprehension and fluency. They have measures of both. And the question is, to what extent does fluency predict comprehension? And what there at the bottom is this: 20 to 83% of the variance in comprehension can be explained by fluency. Grade 1 all the way up through grade 9, probably even beyond grade 9 if we had done the studies there, but definitely through the first 9 years of school. 20 to 80%, imagine that. The fact that we could have on our students' performance in reading comprehension, even at that low end is huge. Any of those kids who, failed to do well on our state reading exam, we got them over that hump. But look at the other end, 80%. That would be a huge contribution if it really is that high. And I think for some kids, it is. Here's another share with you, and then we'll talk about exactly how we can go about teaching. Okay, here. So here's the study done by Sheila Valencia at the University of Washington, up there in Northwest of the United States. And what she did was she looked at children who performed poorly, 3rd and 4th graders who performed poorly on these state reading exams. So like the one in Ohio or Georgia or any state, which are motivating tests, third and fourth graders, they read just silently, they answer some questions. And the ones who don't do well, and they ask this question, why? Why are kids doing so poorly in reading comprehension? We found 2% of these kids master show difficulty in word recognition, vocabulary, automatic word recognition, accurate word recognition, and prosodic reading. And things that we talked about last week, and we're talking about right now. These are what upwards of 90% of the kids who do poorly manifest difficulty in. So the potential for helping students is huge there. 70 to 90% of our graders do not, who perform poorly, do not show accurate word recognition, we talked about last week, and then automatic word recognition, prosodic reading, which we're going to talk about, and we're going to jump into it right now here. So, fluency is important. I hope I made that point. Now, what about it? Oh, we're going to get into the meat of the paper here. I have questions yet, so I'm just going to keep going. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat box here. I guess what I'll do here, since there aren't any questions at this point, is we'll for another, say, 40 minutes or so. 40 minutes. I know sitting and listening to me talk for 2 hours is probably can be kind of tough. And I can't see if you need to take a break, go to the refrigerator. But we'll go 45 minutes. We'll stop for some questions and wrap it up there. So we're getting into the meat. We know this is important. We know it's this two-dimensional thing, both prosody and onomaticity. How do we teach it? First, time. Reading first study found 5 minutes per day or less than 5 minutes per day. I need to think more like 15 to 20 minutes per day. My friend Shanahan, with 30 minutes, he thinks it's so important that it would be 30 minutes per day, even into high school, if we're starting new readers. So I'm a little bit more modest on that, but certainly more than 5 minutes per day you need to be devoted to that. And it can be hard. You know, those guys who have your own classrooms, you're digital to the brim. It can be a challenge, but nevertheless, I think you find that it's well worth the challenge. And here, if you will, or the tools. Maybe that's a better way of thinking about a toolbox. Model reading, assisted reading, wide reading, deep reading, and focus on phrasing. We'll go through these toolboxes, this toolbox, and then we'll all together. Okay? So the first thing is easy. We have model fluent reading to our kids. It means reading a lot to kids. You know, we're showing them what fluent reading is. What better way that is by reading to kids? We know that who are read to on a regular basis have larger vocabularies, better comprehension, more enthusiastic about reading. To this, I like to listen to books on tape, or my wife read to each other. Search is out there. This comes from Edutopia. Talking when your students, you're modeling for them what fluent reading is. You know, your students, when I read to kids, we always talk about what I read, the content, but occasionally we'll talk about Rosinski's reading. Did you know to change my voice when I became a different character? What were you when I had this long dramatic pause in my reading to you? What were you thinking when I sped up here but slowed down here? And get them in that it wasn't just the words that carried the meaning, it was the way that I read the words to them. And of course, the message to them is, of course, when you read, even reading to yourself, you need to try to embed that voice, that expression in your own reading. You might want to try sometimes also is actually the opposite. Sometimes we learn from opposite. When students do the opposite, oh boy, I've got a great story for you today. It's one of my favorites. Sylvester Magic Pebble, and then read it like this. Sir Duncan lived with his mother. Fun. Aaron rode in Oatsdale. Of course, you can't go more than a line or two, and they're looking at you kind of funny. And well, I got all the words right. Isn't that good enough? And then, of course, the answer is no. Oh, I guess I'm reading fast enough. And so the next 2 or 3 lines as fast as you can. And you'll look. But the point, of course, if you're reading this way, either too fast or too slow, and the kids are not understanding or enjoying it, model reading certainly is a big part to develop what we call that metacognitive awareness of what fluency is. Many kids think fluency is reading fast, and of course that's not what it is at all. But you're in the reading when you're modeling. So let's move beyond that. And another thing to do would be assisted reading. This is share the reading with a student, or somebody who's a more fluent reader, share reading with a student. So you're both reading together. The most common, the that I use is learning to ride a bike. When I was 6, I got a two-wheeler, and it didn't have any training on it. So I still remember my father helping me. I'd get on the bike and put my feet on the pedals and the hands on the handlebar, and he would grab the seat and say, "Okay, Tim, go." And I go, and hold me up. He wouldn't be putting me, just hold me up, so I wouldn't fall over. And went to go around the yard a couple times, and it didn't take long before we got to the point where he said, "Hey, kid, you're on your own." He gave me a push, and I was off on my own. But I needed somebody to hold me up. That's what we're talking about here with assisted reading. Somebody to read with us and to hold us up while we read. Take a variety of forms. And when I'm talking about assisted reading, I'm not talking about I read a line and then you read a line. I'm talking about I read a line and you read a line together at the same time. So I hear your fluent reading of that text with me. So take a variety of forms. The most common is choral reading. I'm not czar. And read something chorally. Maybe we sing a song every morning, or read a poem every day morning, chorally. Eventually, and we maybe do it several times every day throughout the day. I'll eventually be able to get to that point where I can read it just as well as you can, because you helped me by hearing your voice. My page has done some remarkable research with choral reading, and really can be a powerful tool. I know we often do this with the primary grades, but David's research was with middle school kids. Much it helped them in their own reading, just a few minutes every day of choral reading, because those kids who are not the good readers, they're hearing their more fluent classmates read along with them. That's a big assist. That the other kids are holding their less proficient to classmates up, much like my dad held me up with my bike. Well, pairing, or what we used to call neurological impress read method, that NIM stands for, that's reading together, but just two people. And it was developed by a colleague by the name of Keith Topping, a psychologist from University of Dundee in England. Basically, parents to sit side by side with their child 10 minutes a day and read out loud together. And what was amazing, parents who would do this, okay, so child is reading, parent is reading next to the child, much like as you see in that picture. The child pointing to the text, or the parent is pointing to the text, so that making sure that the child's eyes are on the words they are read, and they read out loud together. Again, not one reads one line and the other one reads another line. They read out loud together. Okay. What I found was that just 10 minutes a day, the child would accelerate their reading by a factor of 3. That is, you're working with a student who's making a half month's progress in reading for a month of school, doing period reading with their mom or dad, or teacher for that matter, or classmate. And now these same kids are making 3 times that progress, a month and a half's progress for every month's worth of school. And a matter of reading more fluently or faster, comprehension improved as well. That you could get that kind of acceleration, but there's something incredibly powerful about reading something and get read to you at the same time in a fluent way. If you're not familiar with paired reading, I think I put some articles on my website you can read, but also just go to YouTube and search paired reading. There's several examples. It's really easy to do. You train parents, actually, those of you who might be in service, using Zoom with your parents, you could teach them paired reading. It's something very easy to do. You could see this on YouTube. Just search paired reading. 5-10-minute video show you see exactly how it's done. It's so incredibly easy yet incredibly powerful at the same time here. Television is another one. What happens when you read a text and you want while you're watching TV with the captions. You're reading the text and you're hearing it at the same time. In the United States for a number of years, but I'll point out something here. Finland has had one of the highest performing countries when it comes to literacy achievement of elementary school students. And things that they attribute it to is to captioned television. Apparently, everything in Finland is captioned. So students read or watch, they're seeing the words and they're hearing the words at the same time. So it's a form of assisted reading here. And yes, we've had that here in the United States for about 40 years. But do you encourage parents to turn on the captioning switch on their television set? Maybe it's something we should be encouraging kids, parents. We may not force kids to do, but it's kind of interesting because captioned television is something that psychologists call an obligatory process, which try as hard as you can. You're going to have your eyes off the words when you're watching captioned TV, and you're hearing words at the same time here. There's actually an article just came out a few weeks ago. Forbes magazine, which is more of a business magazine, but they actually have an education column. And a lady by the name of Natalie Wexler talked about this, something that parents could do to help their kids at home on the stay-at-home crisis that we're on. An easy help kids learn at home, turn on the captions. Take that title, search for it online and Google it, and you'll find the article. You can read it in more detail. Basically, Jesus making the point that this is actually something that works. The way to become a better reader is to read a lot and here get that assist. You're reading here. And I might point out is that captions themselves, you can actually get them on YouTube. And it's very easy to do. So again, if you have your kids sing songs or poetry that is on YouTube, all you have to do is turn on the captioning, and there you have it. It's right there in front of you. In fact, here is one that was some kids I was tutoring not long ago. We were doing it online, and I had the parents, teach "You Are My Sunshine." So I did up on YouTube, searched it, and I asked search for "You Are My Sunshine" with lyrics. You notice there at the top, and so parents could teach their children this great, wonderful song. Also, would be a great, but also have a little bit of reading at the same time, assisted reading here. With coming up, wouldn't that be a great thing for little kids, all kids for that matter, to learn to serenade their moms with "You Are My Sunshine," and they easily learn it and learn a little bit of reading at the same time there. And we have, take it to the next step. We have technology-assisted reading. What happens if you read something and you read to you, but it's not so much reading with a group. You're really listening to a recorded version of this. Well, again, same thing. You're going to get that boost from assisted reading here. Experience where you read something and hear it read to you in that way with a recorded book. But actually, I'd like to take you back to a study that I mentioned earlier, this one by Carol Chomsky, 76, after decoding what? She did this in Boston, and what she did was she was working with struggling readers, and what she did was she taught them phonics, which was, the standard of care, if you will, back then. And they could sound out words like "you wouldn't believe," but they weren't making any progress in terms of comprehension. So that's the second part of the came from. What? Then what do I do? It was books on tape. What was these kids to have lots of reading material. The practice was important, but if they were reading, they were not recovering a lot. So what she recorded material, cassette tape recorder, and record short books for the kids. And they would arranged it so that they would read these texts and listen to them at the same time. So just listening. They weren't closing their eyes. The teachers were constantly there saying, make sure you're tracking the words visually. I won't put way too much text in here, but I love the quote by Tommy, who said, "It helps when I can hear the words while I look at the words. It makes the hard words just as easy as the easy words." And isn't that great? When we struggle, who are struggling, make hard words easy for them. And then the activity comes to assume something of the quality of experienced reading. In a sense, the child to get the real feel of real reading before the ability has actually been gained. So these are fourth graders reading at a second grade level, but they're real. And of course, what that allows them to do is, develop grade content and have accomplishment, but it also improves their reading. This week intervention, slightly less than 4 months, right? And what they did was 8 months gain in reading. And better read faster, reading with better comprehension. There. So you go. But that one study never proves anything. There's other studies as well. But again, what Carol had to say was it gives these kids a chance to practice, not words in isolation, real, authentic reading. Kinds of books that they would find interesting. It wasn't just a matter of because you're second grader, you have you read at a second grade level, you have to be reading second grade material. No, they can read other harder material, and they can read it with good comprehension. Just see, Tim Manahan did a webinar on reading text, and he made the point is that we need to give struggling readers that opportunity to be successful with their material. That's where they're really going to make the gain. But if it's hard for them, we need to give them the support. And one of the support is through assisted reading, either them or recording something for them to read. By a teacher from New Zealand, Merlin Pluck. What's the same thing? She working with struggling readers over the course of a 27-week intervention. I believe it was 1 day a week, and then the other 4 days, the kids would go down this listening center, and they were given a book and a tape recorder, and they said, plug the tape and read the book and listen to it, and come see me when you can read the book without the help of the tape. And so the kids were doing this for 15 to 25 minutes per day. At the tape, read the book, their book, and listened at the same time. What they found was pretty amazing. Over 2 years growth in reading. 7 weeks. 20 interventions. That's about 3/4 of a school year. Average or 2 years. Some kids as much as 4 years growth. Not only that, but they were reading over their grade level, and they maintained their gain over a summer break. It's something powerful if you're a struggling reader. You hear it read to you at the same time, whether it's recorded, working with a partner, working with a group, or watching television for that matter. By the way, if you've never tried caption TV, try it. Next time you're watching a movie on Netflix, turn on the captioning feature, and you'll be surprised how your eyes are drawn to the text there. Now, I know a question that came up from, it says, what level of reading does the student have to have acquired for paired reading to be effective? So that does not sound like echo reading. I would to every grade level, any grade level, just from the beginning stages. It could be echo reading to begin with, but if you read second or the third or fourth time, it's stopping echo reading. It begins to be paired reading as you're reading together. So you mouth with echo reading if you're a beginning reader. I'm thinking grandsons. They're doing that right now. One's a first grader, and the other one's actually a preschooler, but are learning to read by doing that, doing the echo reading. But they've gotten to the point where they got to read with their mom or dad, and now they actually can read some text on their own through that process. So it's just a matter of the nature of the scaffolding that kids need. If they need more scaffolding, then maybe make them like echo reading, but try them to the point where they're actually reading together, hearing the text, and they're seeing the text at the same time that they're reading together here. Edutopia again, and this came out not long ago, just a year and a half ago. The benefits of ear reading, ear way of talking about, put on headphones and read a text that's on an iPad. But a dyslexia specialist from Texas who wrote about this again, as an intervention with her students, and what she found was really pretty amazing here. The kids do this for 15-20 minutes per day. She said after using the resources, the headphones and the books on tape, her students, struggling readers, demonstrated strides in self-confidence, but more importantly, or equally important, and so their reading proficiency. 97% of her students, struggling readers, utilized the audio books and text-speech software, achieved the standard for the state of Texas, their academic readiness. Most of all, the sense of success there at the bottom. The biggest benefit is that these students recognized for reading and academic achievement for kids who are struggling readers. So that sense of accomplishment is so powerful here. Wide reading and deep reading practice. How do you become fluent in anything? Driving a car, you practice, you get better at it, it becomes more automatic. But let's talk about two kinds of practice. Wide reading. That kind of reading we do as adults. When I read something, and right now I'm reading a book, and when I'm done with it, I'll move on to the next book, one thing after another. And this wide reading is pretty important. We know that from a study that was done a long time ago, that two of the top three predictors of reading achievement were reading done at school and the amount of reading done at home. Clearly, that's getting kids to read more. And the problem is especially when we're in a crisis like this, is how do we know that they read more? By the way, the average fourth or fifth grade reader it's about 12 minutes per day at home. So if we could get kids to read more than that, we can expect even higher gains. But we also said kids who struggle in reading read anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes per day. So we need to read a lot at home, wide reading just for the pleasure of it. And the key to wide reading is access, getting lots and lots of materials available to them. And again, with the pandemic going on, that can be an issue for many of our students. And of course, all the great books, like all those cool books, The Hungry Caterpillar and Winnie the Pooh and so on, but also other kinds of things like folk tales and poetry that is so accessible for many of our kids. And the nice thing about this is many of these kinds of material are available online. All you got to do is search poetry for children, and you're going to find that great stuff. Now, this wide reading is supposed to work. Passage A, and you learn a little bit by it, and it moves on to passage B, and you get a little bit better from practicing that, reading it once, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't work like that. It's just more like this, where you're bouncing around the bottom. You read passage A, you get a little bit better, but then B's harder, so you actually go down a little bit. C, well, you didn't make much of progress. These are those kids I was working with when I was a teacher. We were doing reading, and they were reading, but they weren't reading fluently. As a result, they were just kind of bouncing along the bottom and seeing themselves make progress. And of course, it was causing them a great deal of anxiety and frustration because they weren't making much progress. So what we need to balance is wide reading with what we call deep reading or repeat reading, or some call close reading. It's practicing something multiple times until you get good at it, and then move on to the next passage. This is what Jay Samuels found in that study of his, the method of repeated readings. And here's the way it works. You take and kids read it once and twice and then 3 times and a 4th time, and see with this little chart here, with every successive reading, they got better at it. They read it with better expression, greater accuracy, but you expect that, right? You repeatedly get better at it. With readings. Now we're going to move on to passage B. B is than A. It's a more challenging piece. But even challenging, look what happened. Look at that big red line. How the first reading of B is better than the first reading of A. B is harder than A. Well, the first reading of B and the first reading of A was they practiced A. And over that big red line there. By practicing A, that carried over into B. All the words in A and in B, and now they're sight words. Probably a sense of prosody and expression came practicing A that showed up in B. And then the room is confidence. When you practice A and you get it, you start to Say to yourself, hey, I can make myself a good reader. I need to practice more. And then we're going to B. And now B several times through, and you move on to C. C is harder than B. But it can happen. Even though B is more difficult, and just that one, your first reading of C is better than the first reading of B, even though it's more difficult. This is in over 100 studies on repeated reading. And I can tell you that every study I've ever read on repeated readings has shown this. We practice something, getting reasonably good at it, and you get good at that passage, but there's a carryover effect to something you've never read before. Now we're going to progress these kids are reading. There's a problem, though. Get kids actually to engage in repeated readings. You just want you to read this 10 times until you read 120 words per minute, then we're going to move on to the next passage. Where did it really happen where you ask somebody to read something multiple times there? When I took music lessons. I come from a family of musicians, and when I was a kid, I learned to play the trumpet. And I would have to practice a certain piece there, and I had and the reason was there was usually a concert that we had in school, or I played sometimes in my dad's band there. So that idea of performance gave me a real reason to want to practice. So that's the real reason, a real reason. If you're going to perform, do the repeated readings. And how much repetition or repeated readings to read fast, it's repeat readings to make your voice. That expressiveness come alive, so that when you're performing, whether it's a poem or a song, people in the audience are really enjoying and understanding what it is that you're performing for them. Have you ever a poem for an audience or a song for an audience? I bet you rehearsed. If you wish you had. It's a natural reason for us to want to do that here. No reason for repeated readings, not just to read it fast here. So, what are certain kinds of texts that are meant to be performed out? Well, we had a nice starter list of them. But if anybody can find me a poem meant to be read silently, send me an email. Send it to me in an email. I'll send you a check for $20. They don't exist. They're to be read out loud. That's why it's down in America on a Friday night once this pandemic is over. And you'll find a coffee house where poets are performing their poetry out loud for an audience. How about reader? You're sitting on a play, a short play. But there's no props or costumes or scenery. You simply stand up there and read out loud. Well, if you don't need props and costumes and scenery, what do you left to communicate your script with? So you got to practice it. So it's meant to be read out loud. Monologues, speeches from American history. You may remember yourself as children in something to learn great American speeches like, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, or the Gettysburg Address, government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth. These are meant to be read out loud. And in all that, things to be rehearsed or practiced. They're control here. There's so many great things out there. So I've been writing about this for years, how we bring back song and poetry and scripts for our kids to read, because they're so valuable, especially for our struggling readers. I've been working with poets for the last 25 years or so, together collections of books for kids to practice and perform in school and hopefully in home. Here's our clinic. Every one of those charts on the wall is a poem or a song. Every day our kids learn to read something and read it well. They practice it repeatedly. These are the poems that when they go home in school day or the end of our reading clinic time, they go up to mom and dad and say, Mom, I can read something that I could not read at the beginning of the day. So that here. Here's another one a little closer. You can see some of this. Stinky diaper change, boy, my brother smells so strange. One of those great Cats poems there. And then you'll notice what happens then after the kids get the poem down or the song down by practicing it. Then we focus on individual words. Can they read individual words? We pull them out of context. We put them on a word wall. Last week we talked about harvesting words. Put them on isolation and that way, so that you're not always read them in context. We have poetry and they performed. These were two boys that had been reading poems for Two Voices by Paul Fleischman. And so they wrote a poem about sea life, and then they practiced and performed it. And of course, they have justifiable pride in both being a performer as well as an author of these texts there. At our university, we take over a local public school, and around the 4th of July, all together around the flagpole, and we do a little salute to America. We invite the parents and grandparents and friends to come and hear the parents perform. They're all performing things that for the previous days they had been rehearsing. Patriotic songs, poetry, they put on a short play. Here's our kids, they're actually doing some patriotic songs here. And songbook. This songbook is available on my website, by the way. What I wanted you to do is take a close look at their eyes. Now, they know the songs by heart. They've been playing them, so they pretty much know by heart. You're a grand old flag. You're a high flying flag. We're telling these kids, unless you look at the words, it's not reading. And you're not going to get better at reading unless your eyes are tracking the words. So you notice that they're living up to our expectations there. But what a way of celebrating America, but at the same time, these children become stars on this particular day, but become better readers because of the rehearsal that they had engaged in. I've written work teachers. We've actually created books. One American History, reader scripts. I worked with a couple teachers from Texas. I'm still expecting somebody from Georgia to do Georgia history. It's great to have a collection of scripts and poems that reflect Georgia history. But write their own stuff too. Here's something that was written by two kindergartners. I'm Beth. Hi, I'm Katie. Do you love me? No. Okay, then. I'm glad you understand. I am too. I will see you around today. I remember this when I was a child, and when I used to get in trouble for it. But this is what we're expecting kids to do: writing a script, but then they practice and perform it. They can be the poet, they can be the performer at the same time. Isn't that wonderful to see that sort of stuff? And that's really what we're heading for. Last week I was sharing with you, can make their own word letters. Kids make their own, make up their own words, using Latin and Greek words. Kids can write their own plays, their own Reader's Theater scripts, their own poems. Your boys, Ethan and Matthew, they took the Frog and Toad books. Those are perfect for turning into scripts because, Frog, they're doing a dialogue mostly. And what they did was they turned it into a script, which again, they practiced and performed. But they are readers at it because they practiced and then performed it. Hollywood and Broadway are filled with people who are dyslexics, people who somehow stumble on this idea of rehearsing and performing as a way of getting over some reading problems that they might have experienced as kids. Here's elementary grade kids. They took a chapter or an episode out of Seymour Simon's The Incredible Shrinking Machine, and they made it into a script. They add a little bit to it, of their own. But again, the idea that, if you can't take a whole big book and, 120-page book and turn it into a script, but you can take a little part of it and then perform it. Most that we have kids perform are usually only 2 or 3 pages long. They're not terribly long. And master it in a course of 2 or 3 days. So this book by Robert Munsch, The Paper Bag Princess. I love this book. Unique book. It's a reverse fairy tale where the princess has to save the prince. In fact, let me share a couple pages of it with you. Here's how it starts off. Elizabeth was a beautiful princess. She lived in a castle and she had expensive prince clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. I'll tell you both Elizabeth and Ronald. Elizabeth is in love. Ronald looks a little arrogant there, and she has beautiful clothes and so on. Well, anyways, what happened was the drove over and burned everything up with his fiery breath and took away. Now we got more here. You must be Amazon person here. Anyway, the dragon takes off with Prince Ronald in hand. Now was that door about that. It says Please, thank you. Sorry. Where Elizabeth had to put on a paper bag because she got her clothes burnt up, and then she went off and saved Prince Ronald. In advance, it does not have a good ending. The last sentence in the story is they didn't get married after all. So I hope that wasn't a spoiler for you, but it was. But yeah, these are third graders. They took the story and they wrote their own version of it. And what I did was they didn't write their own version. They turned it into a script, practiced and performed it. And with you is it's a verbatim script. The part that I underlined and bolded is parts that are not in the story. They knew that fairy tales began with once upon a time, but it's not there, so they put it in there, once upon a time. There wasn't a lot of dialogue, so they had to put in dialogue. Notice they have Elizabeth saying, "This is a Gucci blouse." She was in that big dress to begin with. And then if Prince Ronald had the tennis racket, he said, "Tennis, anyone?" About the text is written, "Yes." Right? When kids are creating their own dialogue here, now you looked at it and say, well, that's not real writing, is it? I would say it truly is true writing. You know, the whole community of writers in Hollywood and Broadway, that's all they do is they take other people's stories and they turn them into scripts for movies and TV and plays. And by add that when you're creating, guys, what you're doing is you're inferencing. You're creating inferences. You know, you're making about what these characters are saying and what they're doing. You know, that's the highest level of comprehension out there when you're making inferences. I love this. I love seeing kids be creative like this and then practicing and performing what they're doing. One other book here that I hope you might put on your list if you don't have it. It's I'm the Dog and I Am the Cat by Donald Hall. Hall was the poet laureate of the United States about 4 or 5 years ago. Not poet laureate, the poet. And he worked for kids. And it's really a neat book. It's about a dog, cat, and how they see things differently in their house. I have kids perform it. Can you imagine one of your students playing the role of this Rottweiler? I'm the dog, I like bones, I like to bury bones, that's reading, I can take it or leave it, but I do like it when they feed me. And then have another one of your students playing Mr. Attitude. I'm the cat, I don't care whether they feed me or not, as long as I get fed. Some tease them and feed me, and then I turn my nose up at what I get. Typical cat. Then what's how these two animals see things. The dog sees the cat one way, the cat sees the way the see another way. And that's what we had show up at our house a few minutes ago here. And if the dog was around, the dog would probably be barking at the delivery man. The cat was just looking up at, just looking for some leg to rub up against. Typical cat here. Oh, it's a performance, right? The kids can perform, but it's more than that. It can be a model for kids writing. Kids write their own versions of this. Be I am Hillary, I am Donald, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm the Lizard, I'm Harry Potter, I'm Sylvester, and on and on. I'm a deciduous tree, I'm a coniferous tree, I'm a cumulus cloud, I'm a nimbus cloud. Every one of those we've had students write their own version of it. For example, Frog, this is by Brittany and Amanda, who after doing a little study of amphibious and reptilian animals, were asked to do something creative. Instead of writing a report or drawing a picture, they wrote a script, which practiced and performed for their classmates. To do the research, they wrote it as a script, they practiced, they performed it. They got stars. They also, and of course, classmates learned something as well, and they became better readers. How about the same thing? A friend of mine, Chase Young, his second grade teacher, previously was a second grade teacher, did it with his second grade students. They would read a story, and after they read it, they would turn as a class into a script that they would practice and perform, the Polar Express. In fact, Chase Young, if you want to jot this down, has a great website. It's called thebestclass.org. He's not, you might say, see him right in the picture, the center of the picture there, the blue shirt. And what he does is, with his class, they write scripts based upon the books that they have already read. If you want to take a look at it, it's a great resource. And if you need a password, it's teacher. So just keep that in mind, thebestclass.org. It's got about 100 scripts there, I think, and of course can be a nice example for kids writing their own material here. So look, you're just asking yourself, how do you put this all together into a weekly routine? Here's how it goes. Suppose this class, we're going to have Friday, we're going to have a poetry slam, or we're going to have Readers Theater Festival, or we're going to have along. What you do is you present the material to your students and you model it for them. Put it on a camera, and you might 5 or 6 poems or songs, and you read your kids and they follow along. On 2, you read everything together chorally. You're gradually shifting the responsibility for reading from me to you. On 1, get into small groups and practice your assigned poem or script or song. And I'm, as a teacher, coaching and giving you feedback in that. First, rehearsal. Of course, on Friday, we're going to invite the principal, invite parents, and we have our grand performance. Everybody's going to get to perform their material. The following all over again, but we'll have another set of material for kids to practice and perform. So minutes per day to devote to this, maybe on Friday a little bit longer when you have a grand performance, but it's a great way to end the week with this wonderful performance by your students. What is saying this? Does it work? Yes, it does. This is what I call the art of teaching. Loretta is a 4th grade teacher down in North Carolina who attended one of my lectures, much like this. She just did this in her classroom. Was her struggling readers, they made on average over 2 years worth of reading. The one class. Now let's for a second. They're reading your struggle, which means you're making less than a year's growth for years worth of school, and now you're making over 2 years growth. Years time, making double the progress. Never did she tell her kids to read faster. All you did was authentically rehearse and practice in this sort of way. There's a teacher from South Carolina, Rhonda Powell, and she worked with in a school that had a lot of kids, a lot of poverty, a lot of the kids who struggle. In fact, what you see there, this is what her kids look like based upon the 5th grade reading assessment there in South Carolina. 2/3 of her kids were below basic. 6th grade teacher in a middle school, she would have these kids for an hour a day, and half the hour she devoted to a regular English language arts curriculum. The other was devoted to poetry, where they would rehearse a poem throughout a week and then perform it on Friday, much like I just shared with you. She had negative feedback from her colleagues who were, thinking just a bunch of fun and games that kids were doing. In fact, they were giving me a call and halfway through the school year and saying, "Am I doing the right stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, I think you are. Hold on, let's see what happens." And because when the school year ended, or that May, when students took the 6th grade version of the state reading exam there in South Carolina, look what happened. And we're comprehension. It's for kids below basic, it's 24%. Still a lot, but cut more than half. But look at the number of percentage of kids proficient or advanced. 5% now, it's over 30%. Amazing, isn't it? We as kids cross the bridge from simple word recognition. They're crossing the bridge to comprehension. And fluency is the bridge there for our students. Okay, so there you go. Let's just a little bit more focus on phrasing. Remember that sentence, the old man, the boat. Good readers, poor readers read word by word here. We work on that with kids because I'll teach kids words, but the word not the natural unit of reading. It's the phrase, the noun phrase, the verb phrase, the prepositional phrase. Think about it. What does a word like if mean? What does love mean? What does the word the mean? By themselves, they're limited. They got to be part of a phrase, and yet we have kids reading of if, in, the, as if they're nouns. Or in phrases. Well, something I talked about last week with you. Take those frequency words that we teach kids and teach them as phrases. The people, write it down, by the water, near the car. They're practicing high frequency words, but they're all practicing reading the phrases, which is so valuable for our kids. So they're reading the word by word. I was on my website again, timrosinski.com. In fact, this is what they look like. So I divided into the first 100 of Ed Fry's high frequency words, the second 100, the third 100, and so on. So they're free. You practice with your students, do it 5 minutes per day. you're going to have a lot of success. And then this text lesson. This is an article that's on my website, something to help kids with. One of helping kids is to help them see where the phrase boundaries are when they read. So text, like this, take a passage out of a book and make a copy of it, and then get out a pencil and mark for your kids where the phrase boundaries are. Make a double slash for indicate where sentence boundaries are, and a single slash indicate boundaries within a sentence. And then practice with your students for 5-10 minutes. Read it quickly, emphasizing the phrase boundaries for 5 or 10 minutes on day 1. Day 2, have them do the thing, but this time without the phrase boundaries, without the markings. The idea is to take that knowledge that you learn on day 1 and transfer it into day 2. Folks, the high frequency phrases in this approach of the phrase markings to the conventionally formed text to be godsend for kids. They get into that word by word reading, and it's like they never get out of it. And this really is a good way of getting them out of that word by word reading here. What I'm going to do is just mention this to you, and if you can hold on I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. What if you put all these things together, modeling, assisted reading, wide reading, deep reading, and phrasing together? Energy. C means it's something greater than the sum of the parts. And we with fluency development lesson and a program called Fast Start. Fluency lesson basically is what we use in our reading clinic, where we tell our clinics when the children working with have not had much success. We want success every single day. How can we? This lesson does it. You find it usually short, terribly long. Kids are going to master it every day. So words, maybe 200 words max, or even could be less than 100 words. A short poem. And you make of that poem for every child that you're working with. And here's about 20 minutes. You start by the teacher reading it to the kids 2 or 3 times, modeling that text, that poem, and talking about it with your kids. The content as well as how the teacher read it. The shift. Let's read it together. Okay, teachers and students read it quarterly 2 or 3 times. That's just assisted reading. Kids practice on their own for 5 minutes, 2 or 3 more repeated readings on their own, maybe with a partner. And then you perform it. Okay, who wants to perform today's poem? Every hand goes up. Why? Because the kids can finally read it very well. And they perform. And a little bit of word study like we did last week. We talked about harvesting words. And we do word sword or word ladder or something like that. That's every single day. The kids are now able to read this poem when school day is over with. But then the second, they keep one copy of this poem at home or at school. Every Friday we'll have a poetry slam. He goes home and they continue practicing with their parents, reading to mom and dad 2 or 3 times, calling up grandma, reading to her. On the phone, reading to the dog, reading to the cat, and we call that the Lucky Listener Club. Whoever listens to you read, they get to sign the back of your poem and they comment. And I love this one because you'll notice that Chloe 2 or 3 times to this young lady read, and Chloe's the dog. Dog loved our good listeners. Cats not so much, but dogs are for sure here. Do this lesson every single day. If you sometime in the summer, I'm not sure how it's going to work out this summer, I'd love for you to come visit our reading clinic because this is the lesson we do with our kids. And what we find is the kids make remarkable progress in the 6 weeks that we have them here. Every day learn to read a poem. We did a study not long ago, a couple years ago. Here we found, and this was only 4 weeks time, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. We test, pre-test, and what you see in the left-hand column there is their word recognition percentage in the pre-test, and then 4 weeks later is the post-test. And look at the gains. The first from 77% to 92%. It was us. The other's not quite as big, but still quite significant for a short 4 weeks time. Look at the words per minute. Grade through 4th grade. The gain, and that's what's there by the green arrow. That's our kids gained 2.8 words correct per minute, 2.4 words per minute over the course of each week that we had them. Okay, that to the last column. This is what research by some folks at Vanderbilt University said should be an ambitious gain. To get kids to read these kind of gains, see accelerated progress. And what here is that at every grade level, second grade, third grade, and fourth grade, exceeded the ambitious goals set by the Vanderbilt folks. First graders were slightly below the ambitious gain there. Again, amazing, isn't it? And we saw gains in comprehension as well. Another in Toledo, Ohio. Over the course of, this was done a couple years ago, from November of 2015 to March. So what is that, about 4 months time? We see the right-hand column tells you what you would expect in terms of oral reading fluency, a gain of about 14 words. These gained 27 words a gain of 27 words correct per minute, doubling you would expect. Same in terms of comprehension too. Our expected improvement would be about 0.4 school grade levels. These gained over a year. So this is the goal of comprehension there. Florida study we did, same thing. You can see third graders going from the 45th percentile in August to the 63rd percentile in reading comprehension. The fifth graders gained also, not quite as good, but still they're gained there. And then this school in Monroe County, Indiana, where Monroe County has something called the third grade guarantee, where every grader is tested toward the end of the school year. They call it the I-Read 3 test, and do not pass this test, they're given a chance to go to summer school for summer. And if they don't, they'll begin in July, and if they don't pass, they may gain. Hence the no third grade guarantee. We have this here in Ohio. Or this week decided to try this fluency development lesson that we just talked about at our intervention program for the kids who did not pass. Okay, it's the summer intervention for these kids. What they did was this, it's reported in a newspaper article that came out, and you can't read that, so I summarized it for you. It basically said, following the summer camp poetry reading program, that's what they called it, and the second round of tests, 9% of Monroe County school students who did not pass back in May ended up passing in July, 83%, highest level of performance in the entire state of Indiana, and has remained that way at the top or very near the top for the last 5 or 6 years. We want to improve comprehension. The way you do that is through fluency there. Durability tells us exactly the same thing. Working especially with struggling readers, what they show in a review of research is that programs like the fluency development lesson I just shared with you have produced gains not only in fluency but also in comprehension there. And then, and if you're actually looking for a program, I don't want to sound endlessly promotional, but I am. I do have a couple programs, especially if you're working with kindergarten, first or second grade. It's called Fast Start for Earners. Of this fluency development lesson, we intended it for parents, but actually teachers use it for kids. It's a Delmar rhyme, and it's with we teach parents this little mantra: read to, read with, listen to your child read. Read to, read with, listen to your child read, and do study. So it's a daily nursery rhyme for our youngest kids. Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep. So, teacher or parent sitting next to the child for 5 to 10 minutes and reading Little Bo Peep. First parent reads or the teacher reads, then the child to read along, and then of course after 3 or 4 readings, invite the child to read it on his or her own as best he or she can. And they, the variety of the text and the rhythm and rhyme make them very accessible. And then a word study. Look at all the EAP words and make a list of all the EAP words from Little Bo Peep and put them on paper and practice them that evening. And the very day, peep and sheep. So longer words too, like sweeper and deepest. And then you move on to another poem. Much same. Well, dissertation study that was done down at Ohio State used this Fast Start with graders, and especially struggling readers in an urban district. And that word recognition with these kids, first graders, so using a test. In August, they had two groups of kids, the Fast Start group and a comparison group. Both groups of kids had the same instruction in school. The only difference was the Fast Start kids, the parents were taught to do this day home with the parents. The comparison group, they had the same instruction in school. They got the poem to take home, but they weren't told exactly what to do. Okay, so they were about equal in terms of word recognition. Come November, 3 months later, look what happened. The Start group was up to a score of 101. They doubled the gain of their classmates. And they had the same instruction in school. The only difference was the parents doing this tenets of read to, read with, listen to your child, read. They also don't see. At the beginning, the Fast Start kids could read about a half a word correct per minute. That's painful to listen to kids read, and all they read is about one word. The comparison group was a little bit better, about one word correct per minute. Later, look what happened. The comparison group made progress from 1 word to 13 words correct per minute, but the Fast Start group made double the progress. They're up to 24 words correct per minute. Instruction in school, the only difference was parents doing this at home. Read to, read with, listen to your child, read. That fluency development lesson did in a very quick with their kids. Saying that this is something that you might want to try. Article just about a year or so ago in the teacher, it's called Readers Who Struggle. And I'm worried about, and that's of course many are worried about as well. Why we have many kids who struggle? It's a proposal for improving their reading. And this talk about why kids struggle, why fluency is a big issue with them, and what we can do with those kids. So again, you want to follow up today, find this on my website and read it. It's a little 4 or 5 page article, but it goes back to the fluency development lesson and shares it with you in a very step-by-step manner. So that's the show. We want kids to become fluent readers. Why? Not because fluency in itself is important, but because fluency is that bridge that allows children to get to comprehension here. So we have about 3 minutes left before 3 o'clock. So questions, do you want to type them in very quickly? And I'll try my best. If not, I'm going to end with a poem and wrap it up. I'll wait and up with anything. So we'll do a minute of wait time, maybe 3 seconds of wait time, see if there's any questions that come up. See anything. If anybody does have any questions, please, if you will, email them to me. I promise that I will get back to you. I hope you will follow me on Twitter because, as I said, every day I post a lesson that you can do with your kids. What I'd like to do is end with a poem. We start with a song, but how about if we end with a poem? This is written by a friend of mine by the name of Russ Walsh, who is a reading educator himself. And I think it speaks to those of us who work with struggling readers, and I think that's everybody who's listening to this webinar. It's called Have You Ever? And I'd like to dedicate it to all you who work so hard for the children, especially those who struggle, because I think you can identify with this. Child, squirm, nervous, tense, struggle to make sense out of those strange squiggles on a page. And have you tremble like a frightened bird, stumble on a tricky word, unable to move on? And seen a child frustrated day after day, fiercely push the book away, crying, I just can't read. I can't. And have continue with the battle. Those who prattle that she will never succeed. And I'll look up at you with pride and smile ocean-wide. Say, I can read this. Yes, I can. And of course, I have. I can feel their mourning of fear, frustration, and failure. For one child's reading triumph keeps the goal within my reach. ask me why it is I teach. Folks, on of Teacher Appreciation Week, thank all you do for our kids. I know that this is National Nurses Day and they are our heroes, but you are too. So thank you. In touch either through Twitter, email, follow me on my website. If help in any way, I very to do it because you guys are the heroes too. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Cheryl or Teresa, and I hope our paths cross again. Thanks again.
Hello, you can hear me? Oh, wonderful. I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Rosinski, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your love for music and helping us to use that to channel teaching. So join us next week, May 13th, for our next session. Have a day.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Hmm.